Terminator 2D No Fate. From what has been shown so far, gives off a strong sense of fan project that succeeded with official license. And this completely changes the expectation on the game. It doesn't seem like a product commissioned just to fill licensing shelves, but rather an old dream of a studio that grew up playing Mega Drive and Super Nintendo and now finally has the chance to turn T2 into that definitive 16-bit game that never officially existed. When you look at Bitmap Bureau's history with games that imitate the 16-bit vibe well, and their declared focus on modern 16-bit games, you can feel that the development context is less, let's surf on nostalgia, and more, let's prove that this style can still deliver something relevant today. One thing that stands out is how the team embraced the difficulty of adapting T2 without sticking to a single type of gameplay, something that would normally kill the project in many larger studios. They openly say that scenes like the future war, truck chases, and hospital infiltrations require different dynamics, and they accepted the challenge of stitching together several mini-genres into one game, going from run and gun a la Contra to more stealthy parts and driving sections. This reveals a very artisanal development context. Instead of looking for the cheapest solution, a generic shooter with cutscenes, they decided to assemble a mosaic of systems, even knowing that this complicates balancing, rhythm, and learning curve. Another point that weighs heavily in the reading of this project is the almost obsessive respect for the aesthetics of T2, not only as a film, but as a visual icon of the 90s. The artist comments that much of Future War is new content, which needed approval from the license holder, and yet it gives the feeling of canonical material because the guys practically internalized Cameron's visual language after watching the film dozens of times. This gives the impression of a development guided by effective memory, of the type, let's recreate the feeling of seeing T2 on VHS and imagine the perfect game in our heads, and not just copy famous scenes. It also draws attention to the care with accessibility within this more hardcore arcade format. Behind the scenes, they comment that the game needs to teach you in seconds, otherwise you give up, and recent materials detail phase and hazard adjustments that change according to the difficulty, which shows that they are thinking of a punitive arcade, but not unfair. Added to modes like arcade focused on score, longer modes, and even variants like Mother of the Future, the development context sounds like a team trying to balance hardcore arcade fans, modern console players, and even speedrunners in one package. In the end, looking only at what has been released, the feeling is of a passion project managed with the maturity of someone who has already understood their own technical limits. The team has its own engine designed to port the game to everything, from current platforms to retro hardware, which reinforces this mentality of modern 16-bit game that could exist both in the past and today. It gives the impression of a development where profit and brand are important, of course, but the emotional engine itself is the desire to make the 2D T2 that they wanted to play when they were teenagers, mixing iconic scenes, original stories, and multiple endings in an explicit love letter to one of the most striking films in pop culture. From what has been shown in the trailers and official descriptions, the game's story hits the mark by mixing the classic T2 plot with original pieces, creating a narrative that is not just a lazy retelling of the film, but an expansion that gives space for what if, without betraying the spirit of the franchise. You play as Sarah Connor in the T-800 in the past, facing the T-1000 in missions that recreate iconic moments like the freeway chase or infiltrations into Cyberdyne, but with ramifications that change the path based on your choices. This gives off a personal vibe of excitement, like reliving the film for the first time, only now with the power to alter destiny instead of just watching passively. What hooked me the most was the inclusion of adult John Connor leading the resistance in the future, interspersing war missions against Skynet with those of the past, something that the trailers show as a temporal back and forth that gives epic scale to the plot. It's not just Sarah flees from the T-1000 again. They are battles in apocalyptic scenarios with hunter-killers and centurions, expanding the lore of T2 beyond Judgment Day. I feel that this transforms the game into a perfect bridge between the film and the larger Terminator universe, leaving me eager to see how decisions in the present echo in the future, like an interactive version of the VHS that I watched repeatedly in childhood. The multiple endings promised are the great trump card here, because they prevent the story from becoming a predictable straight line. Trailers mention alternative paths based on choices during missions, such as failing to protect something key or opting for more aggressive routes. This suggests a narrative with emotional replay value, where you can mess with the timeline and explore radical what-ifs, like Sarah dealing with the T-1000 alone, or variations in the future war. Personally, this resonates as the dream of every fan. Not only recreate T2, but imagine the endings that Cameron cut or never thought of. Looking only at what has been released, the plot balances fidelity to the film with creative freedom in an organic way, without forcing silly expansions. Scenes like the Cyberdyne factory or the helicopter chase gain new layers, but maintain the human versus machine tension intact. The characters seem faithful, Sarah as a tough survivor, T-800 as a reprogrammed tank, and John as hope divided between child and leader. It gives a personal, nostalgic feeling, as if the game captures that urgency of saving the future that held me in the cinema in 1991. Overall, based on what has come out so far, this story convinces me as a love letter to T2 that respects the canon but dares to expand it, promising a cohesive campaign of more than 15 levels that mixes action, stealth, and drama in multiple timelines. The variable endings and the focus on real choices elevate what could be just fan service to something replayable and emotionally impactful. I get the impression that it will be that arcade narrative that sticks in the memory, like Contra meets Terminator, making me want to beat it to unravel all the possible no fates. From what rolled out in the gameplay trailers, the game delivers a root run and gun inspired by Contra and Metal Slug that gave me immediate nostalgia shivers, with Sarah, T-800, and John Connor exchanging fluid shots while jumping, rolling, and sliding in scenarios full of Skynet enemies. The classic power-ups like Spread Shot, Homing, and Laser appear as free pickups, forcing that constant hunt for ammunition amidst the chaos. And the combat seems responsive enough to stick to the screen without frustrating. Personally, just seeing John throwing pipe bombs at T-800s and Sarah doing slides to dodge, I feel that they captured that arcade urgency of the 90s that I loved in arcades. What excites me the most is the variety that breaks the monotony of the linear shooter. Stealth, with Sarah hiding, and brutal hand-to-hand takedowns. Driving sections in the freeway chase, shooting at T-1000 helicopters, and tense platforming in the Cyberdyne factory with timed lasers and flames. Each character has a unique moveset. T-800 as a tough tank, John more versatile, Sarah stealthy and aggressive in close range, which transforms missions into personalized experiences depending on who you control. This gives me the vibe of a game that respects the film but expands to multiple mini-genres, leaving me crazy to test how a chase turns into a boss fight. The bosses promise to be the highlight, with patterns that change by difficulty, like the Centurion sweeping the floor faster or smaller crosshairs on the helicopter, requiring precise timing and use of cover instead of just spamming shots. Environmental hazards scale together, like welding arms and more frequent fire jets in hard mode, which gives a sense of fair challenge even for those who enjoy punitive arcade. Looking at the videos, it seems that the bosses are not just HP tanks, but tests of reflex and strategy that stick in the memory, like those of Contra that made you retry until you memorized. The multiple difficulties, no problemo to Judgment Day, and extra modes like Arcade, Infinite, Boss Rush, and Mother of the Future show ambition beyond the 15+ level campaign, with scoring, infinite waves, and training to grind skills. Hidden checkpoints and rare items encourage exploration without breaking the run-and-gun flow, and unlocks like cheats in Ultra Hard give insane replay value. Personally, this resonates as perfect for my side that loves to beat Root Arcade several times, adjusting to casual or hardcore according to the vibe. Overall, based only on what has been released, the gameplay of Terminator 2D No Fate convinces me as the missing T2 16-bit, mixing frantic shooting, tactical stealth, and variety without losing the fair and addictive arcade essence. The videos pass solid technical polishing, with detailed sprites and rhythm that leaves no room for boredom, making me imagine boss rush marathons after the story. There is that personal expectation of a game that delivers hype without disappointing, like reliving 1991 but with modern layers that ask for mastery. The graphics of Terminator 2D No Fate deliver a modern 16-bit pixel art that screams 90s without falling into the lazy upscale filter, with hand-drawn sprites that capture the raw essence of T2 impeccably. Sarah Connor with her torn jacket, the chromed T800 of the T1000 deforming into fluid shapes, and John in the future with improvised armor. Everything seems sculpted pixel by pixel to recreate those iconic moments of the film that I paused on VHS. Personally, it gives an immediate nostalgia of Mega Drive, but with smooth animations that avoid the choppy of bad games of the time. The scenarios are what impressed me the most, full of environmental details that build immersion without overloading the screen. The freeway chase with cars exploding and helicopters in the sky, the Cyberdyne factory with conveyor belts and flashing lasers, or the apocalyptic future with Skynet ruins and hunter-killers hovering. It's not just a static background. Subtle parallax scrolling and smoke/detonation particles give life, as if the world of Judgment Day gained a 2D layer that respects the arcade budget but innovates in polishing. I feel that this transforms linear levels into living cinematographic frames, making me pause trailers just to absorb the atmosphere. Visual effects like explosions, homing shots, and the liquid morphing of the T1000 elevate everything to a level that resembles Contra 3 or Metal Slug, with screen shake and flashes that punch without exaggerating. The boss fights promise spectacle, like the helicopter sweeping with spotlights or Centurions with illuminated patterns, where light and shadow guide the chaos. For me, this passes artisanal mastery. It's not generic pixel art to sell nostalgia, but a faithful recreation that makes the T1000 seem like a palpable visual threat in 2D. The size of the sprites draws positive attention, large enough for facial expressiveness and dynamic poses, without becoming chunky on modern screens, and the full-screen portraits in Attract mode recreate scenes from the film with an emotional punch that I would love to see idle in the menu. Animations are fluid, from Sarah's slide to the T800's reload, showing layers of shading that give depth without unwanted modern filters. It gives that personal vibe of could run on a turbocharged Super Nintendo, leaving me eager to see how ports on Switch and PS5 maintain this purity. All in all, based only on what has been released, the graphics convince me as the visual heart that makes Terminator 2D No Fate shine as the definitive retro game of the franchise, balancing fidelity to the film with pure pixel creativity. It's art that not only serves gameplay, but honors the legacy of T2 while innovating in what 16-bit could be today. There is the impression of a feast for the eyes of those who grew up with arcades, those that stick in the retina and ask for constant screenshots. From what the trailers and gameplay footage show so far, the performance of Terminator 2D No Fate seems rock solid on modern hardware like PS5 and PC, with frame rates locked at 60 FPS smooth, and without visible dips in scenes full of explosions or intense boss fights. The videos run fluid, with screen shake and particles without stutter, passing that confidence of Bitmap Bureau's own engine optimized for heavy 2D pixel art. Personally, this relieves me because retro indie games sometimes stumble in polishing, but here I feel that it will be a pure arcade experience without frustrating locks. On the Switch, the expectation is more cautious based on the history of 2D ports. Forums speculate 60 FPS handheld without problems for being light pixel art, but I cite Ninja Gaiden as an example of ports that cap at 30 FPS even on capable hardware. Trailers don't show docked/handheld directly, but the low resolution and absence of heavy 3D effects suggest that it will run well on the original Switch, perhaps with a day one patch for Switch 2. For me, who enjoys portability, this is crucial. If it maintains responsiveness for slides and shots, it becomes the perfect game for quick sessions without lag. Bitmap Bureau has pedigree in multi-platform ports, with Xenocrisis and Final Vendetta running smoothly on Mega Drive, Neo Geo to Dreamcast, thanks to the abstraction engine that adapts without sacrificing quality. This reinforces the bet on stable cross-gen performance, from PS4, Xbox One, to Series X and S, without the frills of upscale that kill fluidity in retro. Effects like HDR and 120 plus FPS optional on the PC indicate ambition beyond the basics, but without unnecessary ray tracing for 2D, focusing on low input lag and precise scoring for arcade modes. Videos don't show tearing or input delay, with frame-perfect animations that ask for precision, suggesting well-implemented VSync. This excites me for the competitive side. Buttery performance is what separates good retro from replayable masterpiece. Overall, just by what has been released, I bet that Terminator 2D No Fate will deliver exemplary performance as the definitive T2 16-bit, with stability that honors the urgency of the film on all major platforms. Less concern with Switch handheld, but full confidence in next-gen consoles/PC for marathons without breaks. There is that personal vibe of a game made to last generations, running smoothly where it matters without technical excuses. It's worth buying Terminator 2D No Fate at launch if you love root arcade run and gun like Contra or Metal Slug and want to relive T2 in perfect pixel art, because what has been released shows insane polishing in varied gameplay, expanded story, and solid performance that screams game ready to shine. Personally, just from the trailers, I feel that it's one of those rare indies that deliver hype without disappointing, with replay value of multiple endings and extra modes that ask for immediate investment. Waiting only makes sense if you prefer to see reviews to confirm ports on the Switch, but for the core experience, launch is the ideal timing to dive into the hype. The game is indicated for hardcore Terminator fans who dream of the official 16-bit of T2, retro arcade players who grind high scores in Boss Rush, and those who enjoy fair challenges with scalable difficulties from casual to punitive. It's not for those looking for open world or deep narrative like AAA, but it shines for speedrunners, achievement collectors, and local co-op marathoners who want 15-plus replayable levels. For me, based on the footage, it fits perfectly in my profile of retro lists, mixing nostalgia with fresh innovation. Waiting may be worth it if you are the type who waits for post-launch patches to zero rare bugs or balance new difficulties, especially in multi-platform ports where Switch handheld sometimes needs tweaks. But Bitmap Bureau's history in stable deliveries makes me believe that it will come out polished, without the frills of day one disasters that kill hype. Personally, just seeing the fluid trailers, I see no reason to hold off beyond tight budget. It's worth day one if you prioritize support to the indie dev that transformed fan project into official licensed, with post-launch content like infinite waves and leaderboards that extend useful life. Also indicated for nostalgic parents playing co-op with children, since accessibility allows. I will buy at launch because the package, immersive pixel art, responsive combat, branched story, and buttery performance gave me that rare vibe of, this is the game that was missing in the retro collection. For those who are like me, focused on beat-em-up and Metroidvania, but open to top-tier run and gun, it's an investment that I hope I won't regret.